They say every family hides secrets. But I never thought mine would break a vase across my face the night before my sister's wedding. Stick with me while I share my story. And if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. The night before my sister's wedding, the house was glowing with lights, laughter, and fake smile. My parents wanted everything to be perfect. The food, the guests, even the air felt staged. But underneath it all, something was off. I could feel it in the way my mom's voice shook when she spoke to me, and how my dad avoided my eyes. I was standing in the dining room, holding a small envelope. It had a document they wanted me to sign. My mom, Dara, said it was just a small formality. My dad, Cal, stood behind her, arms crossed, watching. My sister, Maylee, would inherit the lake house after the wedding, they said. I was supposed to agree and sign it away. That lake house wasn't just a building. It was my grandma's. It was where she used to bake pies, tell stories, and tell me I was her favorite girl. Before she passed, she'd whispered, "It's yours someday." Now that promise was being stolen. "I'm not signing this," I said, pushing the paper back across the table. My voice trembled, but I meant it. My mom's face changed. The fake calm vanished, replaced with fury. "You're always so ungrateful, Lena. You ruin everything good in this family." "I'm not ruining anything," I shot back. "You're the one stealing from me." The room went still. My dad's jaw tightened. My mom's hands shook. Then it happened so fast I barely saw it. Her hand grabbed the vase from the counter and hurled it straight at me. It shattered against my cheek. The sound was sharp and ugly, echoing through the house. For a second, I didn't even feel pain, just shock. Then the blood came, running warm down my face. Maylee screamed. My dad didn't move. He just stood there, staring like I was something broken on the floor. I looked up at my mom, clutching my face. "Why?" I whispered. Her answer was cold. "You were never supposed to have that house. You were never supposed to have anything." Those words hit harder than the vase. I staggered back, dizzy from the hit from the betrayal. I could taste blood and porcelain dust in my mouth. I looked at my father one last time, hoping maybe for a sign of regret. But there was nothing, just silence. Without another word, I walked out the door. My hands shook as I grabbed my car keys, blood still dripping down my neck. Outside, the night air was cold and heavy, but I could finally breathe. Behind me, through the glass windows, I saw my family gathering around the table again, like nothing had happened. The laughter started back up, thin and hollow. That was the moment I knew I didn't belong to them, and that was the moment everything began to fall apart. The day before everything exploded, the house looked calm from the outside. Inside, the air was tense. My mom sat at the dining table with a folder in front of her, tapping her nails against the wood. My dad stood by the window, his hands behind his back, pretending to study the trees. When I walked in, they both turned toward me at once, their faces tight and expectant. "Lena, we need to talk," my mom said. Her voice was smooth, almost gentle, like she was trying too hard to sound kind. "It's about the wedding. Just a small favor." I sat down, already uneasy. She slid a paper toward me, covered in neat black print and official stamps. "It's for the family's sake," she said. "Maylee's big day means a lot to all of us, and this will make everything easier." My dad added quietly, "It's nothing complicated, just a signature." Something in their tone made my stomach twist. I started reading. The words blurred together until one sentence froze me. A transfer of ownership for my grandmother's lake house. My name replaced by Maylee's. I looked up. "Why is this here?" My mom smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "It's just practical. You're not using the place, and Maylee's starting a new life. Think of it as helping your sister." I shook my head. "That house is all I have left from Grandma. She wanted me to keep it." Her smile disappeared. "You're being selfish," she said sharply. "We've done everything for you. Now you can do this one thing for us." My dad's voice was firmer now. "Lena, it's not a request. This is what's best for everyone." "For everyone or for Maylee?" I asked. My hands trembled as I pushed the papers back toward them. Neither of them answered. My mom's jaw tightened. "You always have to make things difficult," she muttered. "Do you want to ruin her wedding? After everything we've given you?" I stared at her, wondering what she meant by everything. They'd never given me much beyond criticism and control. I remembered my grandmother's last words, the way she'd squeezed my hand and whispered that the lake house was mine to protect. "I'm not signing," I said quietly. The silence that followed was heavy. My dad stepped forward, his face blank, his voice calm in a way that made it worse. "You'll regret this decision." Maybe he thought it was a threat. Maybe it was. I stood up, heart pounding, and walked out before I could say something I couldn't take back. From the hallway, I heard my mom's voice break through the quiet. "She's going to destroy everything we built," she hissed. I didn't understand what she meant, not yet. But I could feel the shift in the air, the moment something inside them snapped. It wasn't about the wedding anymore. It was about control, secrets, and a favor I was never meant to refuse. The morning after their demand, I drove to Maylee's apartment. It was filled with flowers, ribbons, and half-packed boxes of wedding favors. She opened the door in a silk robe, her hair in loose curls, grinning like she had nothing to hide. "Wow, you look rough," she said, eyeing the small bruise on my cheek. "Didn't sleep again?" I ignored her comment and stepped inside. The place smelled like roses and champagne. Every surface gleamed, and her dress hung on the closet door, glowing under the light. "We need to talk," I said. She raised an eyebrow, pretending confusion. "About what?" "The papers Mom and Dad wanted me to sign," I said, keeping my tone steady. Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes flickered. "Oh, that? I don't know much about it. Mom handles those things." "Don't lie to me," I said quietly. "You knew exactly what it was." Maylee sighed, leaning against the counter. "You're making drama over nothing. It's just a house, Lena. You don't even go there. It's not just a house. It's mine." She rolled her eyes. "You always think everything should be about you. You can't stand that I'm happy, can you?" Her words cut deep, but I saw something beneath the act, fear. She avoided my eyes, fiddling with her engagement ring. "You're letting them use you," I said. "Don't you see that?" She laughed softly, but it sounded forced. "You should stop before you embarrass yourself at the wedding." Before I could answer, my dad's voice came from the hallway. "Girls, what's going on?" I hadn't realized he was there. He stepped into the kitchen, smiling too wide. His hand brushed the back of his neck, a nervous habit I'd seen all my life. "Everything okay?" "Just talking," Maylee said sweetly. "Lena's being dramatic again." I stared at him. "You knew about the papers, didn't you?" His smile didn't waver. "Your mother thought it was the simplest way to handle things." He looked calm, but his eyes darted toward the hallway to his study door, the one that was always locked. His glance lasted only a second, but it was enough. I followed it, my pulse quickening. "What's in there?" "Private documents," he said quickly. "Nothing for you to worry about." The way he said it made me certain that was a lie. My mom appeared from the other room, holding a tray of tea like we were some happy family. "Let's not ruin Maylee's day with more of your nonsense," she said with that polished smile she wore around guests. "You've already caused enough stress." I met her gaze, searching for a trace of warmth. There was none, only cold satisfaction. Maylee wrapped her arm around her fiancé's photo on the counter and smirked. "See, this is why they trust me. I don't make trouble." I looked at her, perfect dress, perfect hair, perfect daughter, and realized the truth she'd never admit. Her perfection was built on lies, and my parents had built the whole family around pretending those lies were love. I couldn't sleep that night. Every word, every fake smile replayed in my head until I couldn't take it anymore. The thought of that locked drawer and my father's nervous glance wouldn't leave me alone. By midnight, I was already on the road, heading toward the lake. The drive was long and silent. The headlights cut through the fog that had settled over the water. That place used to bring peace, but when I stepped out of the car, it felt like stepping into someone else's life. The path to the porch was lined with fresh stones, new lights, and trimmed hedges that hadn't been there before. I unlocked the door with the old key I'd kept on my keychain since Grandma's funeral. The hinges no longer squeaked. When I stepped inside, my breath caught. The house didn't look like I remembered. Gone were the lace curtains, the old rocking chair, the smell of cinnamon and cedar. The air was cold and sharp, the furniture modern, expensive, and soulless. There was no dust, no sign of neglect. Someone had been living here. I walked through the room slowly. Everything looked staged, like a photo from a magazine. The kitchen had brand new appliances, the kind my parents could never have afforded. The cabinets were full of wine glasses and imported bottles. In the living room, I found framed photos of Maylee and her fiancé, Grant, smiling at the camera. None of me, none of Grandma. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. They had already taken it, even before the papers. I moved toward the small office in the back. Grandma's desk was still there, though polished and cleared of the things she once loved. I ran my hand along the drawer handles, remembering how she used to keep her will and letters tucked inside. The bottom drawer didn't open at first, but when I pulled harder, it clicked. A false panel slid loose, revealing a stack of folders hidden underneath. Inside were bank statements and contracts, large sums of money moving between my parents' account and a business named Harlan Development, owned by Grant. The transfers went back years, all labeled as consulting or property investments. My chest tightened as I flipped through the pages. It wasn't about helping Maylee. It was about covering something, laundering money through the house, using Grandma's property as the front. One envelope stood out. It had my grandmother's signature, shaky but familiar, dated after the day she'd already passed. My hands trembled. I sank into the chair, trying to process it all. My parents hadn't just betrayed me. They'd rewritten history, stolen from Grandma, and tied it all to Maylee's future husband. Thunder rolled across the lake, echoing through the glass windows. For the first time, I felt afraid to be there. Someone had been living in this house, and I wasn't sure if they were gone for good. I gathered the documents, folded them into my jacket, and turned off the lights. As I stepped outside, I glanced back at the house, my grandmother's house, glowing faintly in the storm. It no longer felt like home. It felt like a lie waiting to be exposed. When I got back to my apartment, the rain hadn't stopped. The documents were soaked at the edges, but the ink was still readable. I laid everything out on the kitchen table, my hands still shaking. I had planned to focus on the financial records, to trace where the money came from. But one folded paper slipped from the stack and caught my eye. It wasn't a bank file. It was old, creased, and yellowed around the edges. At first glance, it looked like another property deed, until I saw the heading, Certificate of Birth. I leaned closer. My stomach twisted. The name printed across the top wasn't mine. It read Marla June Fenton. The date of birth matched mine exactly. The parents listed were unknown. Someone had written over the paper in pen, crossing out Marla, and replacing it with Lena Calden, my supposed name. I stared at it, reading the lines again and again, hoping it was some clerical mistake. But the handwriting on the correction wasn't random. It was my mother's. A chill spread through me. I opened another envelope, smaller than the rest, filled with photographs. Some were faded, clearly old, 2 toddlers on a picnic blanket. One looked like Maylie, all blonde curls and dimples. The other had darker hair, eyes too serious for her age. On the back of that photo was a single word written in blue ink, Marla. My heart pounded so loud it drowned out the sound of the rain. There were other pictures, my parents in younger years, Maylie always in their arms, me always slightly apart. In one, I was standing near a woman I didn't recognize. She had kind eyes, tired but warm. The corner of the photo was torn, cutting off part of her face, but I could see her hand resting protectively on my shoulder. Why would my parents keep this hidden? I searched through the rest of the pile, finding legal letters, court stamps, and something like a hospital report. Pieces of information that didn't fit together. Different last names, different towns, different records of the same date. It was as if someone had rewritten my entire existence. My chest tightened. All the moments that once felt normal, my mother's distant affection, my father's cold detachment, began to look different. Their anger, their fear of me asking questions, suddenly made sense. I wasn't their daughter. Or maybe I had been once, until they made sure the papers said otherwise. I traced the name Marla with my finger. It felt strange, familiar in a way I couldn't explain, like hearing a song you used to know. I gathered the photos, placing them carefully in a dry folder. The rain outside had turned into a steady hum, filling the silence that grew heavier by the second. My reflection in the window didn't even look like mine anymore. I whispered the name softly, Marla, and the sound felt both wrong and right all at once. Somewhere deep down, I already knew this wasn't just a stolen name. It was the key to everything my parents had tried so hard to bury. The clue came from a small envelope tucked behind the birth certificate. Inside was a torn receipt from a clinic in a nearby county, dated the same year I was born. Scrawled across the back was a name, June Fenton, and a number that looked barely legible. I didn't know what I expected to find, but I knew I had to follow it. By evening, I was driving down a quiet road that led away from the suburbs into a fading stretch of highway. The motel stood alone on the edge of town, the kind of place people stayed when they had nowhere else to go. The neon sign flickered weakly, and the parking lot was half empty except for a few old cars. I walked up to the office, heart pounding. The clerk behind the counter barely looked up when I asked if anyone named June Fenton lived there. He nodded toward the far corner. Room 12. She pays weekly. The hallway smelled like damp carpet and cigarettes. I stopped in front of the faded door, hesitated for a long moment, then knocked. A soft voice answered. Who is it? My name's Lena, I said. I think you might know me. There was a pause. Then the door creaked open an inch. The woman who looked out was older, her hair graying, her eyes tired but sharp. When she saw my face, her hand flew to her mouth. The color drained from her cheeks. Oh my God, she whispered. You're... She didn't finish. She opened the door wider and stumbled back, tears already forming. I stepped inside. The room was small, cluttered with half-packed bags and papers spread across a table. She stared at me like she was seeing a ghost. You're Marla, she said finally, her voice breaking. I thought I'd never see you again. My chest tightened. You know that name? She nodded, covering her face with trembling hand. I'm your mother. The words hit me like a wave. My knees felt weak. That's not possible, I said, though part of me already knew it was. June took a shaky breath. I was young, alone, and broke. I met Dara through a church group. She said she could help me, that she and her husband couldn't have more children. I thought she meant temporary care, just until I got on my feet. But when I tried to get you back, they changed their number. They moved. They made sure I couldn't find you. She opened a drawer and pulled out a faded photograph, me as a baby, wrapped in a pink blanket. I kept this, she whispered. It's all I had left. I sat down, unable to speak. Every lie, every strange memory, every distance between me and the people I grew up calling parents suddenly made sense. June reached for my hand. I never stopped looking. But they had power, money, and the law. I had nothing. The room went quiet except for the hum of the old air conditioner. For the first time, I wasn't sure who I was, only that everything my parents had built was a stolen story, and I was the proof they tried to erase. I left the motel just before dawn. The sky was gray, and the roads were slick from the night rain. June's words echoed in my head with every mile. She had given me answers, but not peace. I couldn't erase the years stolen from her, or from me. What I could do was make sure everyone saw the truth that had been buried for so long. When I reached my apartment, I laid everything I had collected across the table. The bank records, the forged deed, the birth certificate. Each page was a piece of their deception, but none of it was as sharp, as irrefutable, as what June handed me before I left. It was a photograph, faded, corners bent. In it, a baby sat on a patch of grass, eyes half closed in the sunlight. Around her tiny neck hung a small silver charm in the shape of a crescent moon. "You wore that every day," June had said. "It was a gift from my mother. They took it with you." I remembered that necklace. I'd seen it on my mother's dresser many times, sitting beside her perfume bottles. She never wore it, but she never threw it away either. When I was little, I once tried to touch it, and she'd snatched it back, saying, "That's not for you." Now I knew why. The wedding was only 2 days away. My family would be there, smiling for photographs, pretending to be perfect. I pictured my mother's practiced grin, my father's stiff posture, Maylee's polished charm. They would stand beneath the arch of white roses, lying to everyone one last time. I couldn't let it happen. I spent the next day quietly preparing. I printed copies of the documents, sealed them in envelopes, labeled each one. I rehearsed what I'd say, not to hurt them, but to tell the truth they'd kept hidden for decades. This wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about giving June her voice back, about reclaiming the life they stole from both of us. That evening, I drove back to the house I'd grown up in. The windows were glowing with warm light, the smell of flowers drifting through the open door. My mother was upstairs when I entered, humming softly. I crept into her room, my heart pounding. The dresser looked the same as always, neat, untouched, her jewelry arranged in perfect order. And there it was, the crescent moon necklace. The same one from the photo, its silver dull but intact. I lifted it carefully, feeling the weight of every lie attached to it. I slipped it into my pocket. That was my proof, the one thing they could never deny. When I walked out of that house, the necklace pressed against my palm, it felt like carrying a promise. The wedding would be my stage, not for revenge or chaos, but for truth. They had taken everything from me once. This time, I would take back the only thing that ever mattered, my name, my story, and the mother who never stopped looking for. The day of the wedding arrived bright and flawless, the kind of morning that looks peaceful until you realize how much is hidden beneath it. I parked at the edge of the venue, away from the sea of polished cars and white decorations. Laughter floated through the garden, mingled with the string music drifting from the tent. Every part of it felt too perfect, too rehearsed. I slipped inside quietly, unnoticed among the guests. The tables sparkled under chandeliers, and my family stood near the front, glowing for cameras. My mother looked radiant, her smile tight and controlled. My father hovered close by, pretending to be proud. Maylee stood in the center, wrapped in lace, her hand on Grant's arm. She looked exactly like she always wanted, perfect. No one saw me until the ceremony was over. The applause faded, people moved toward the reception, and glasses clinked. Then the host called for speeches. My name wasn't on the list, but I didn't wait for permission. I stepped up to the microphone. The crowd murmured in surprise. My hands shook, but my voice stayed steady. "Thank you for inviting me," I began. "I'm not here to toast to the happy couple. I'm here to tell the truth about the family standing before you." My mother's smile froze. My father's hand tightened around his glass. Maylee turned pale. I looked out over the guests. People say parents are supposed to protect their children. Mine didn't. They shattered that promise the night before this wedding, when they smashed a vase into my face because I refused to sign away what was rightfully mine. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped a fork. I continued, my voice rising. That wasn't the first betrayal. It started long before. They took money that wasn't theirs. They used my grandmother's home to cover their schemes. And the daughter they claimed as their own, me, wasn't even theirs to claim. My father moved toward the stage, but I held up a hand. "Sit down, Cal. You've lied enough." Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out the necklace, the small silver crescent moon. The lights caught on it, sending flashes across the room. "This belonged to my real mother, June. She's here today. She can tell you how Dara and Cal promised to help her, then stole her baby and erased her name." All eyes turned toward the back of the room. June stepped forward slowly, tears streaking her face. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. My mother swayed, gripping the tablecloth. My father went rigid. Maylee took a step forward, her lips trembling. "Lena, please," she whispered. "Don't do this." I looked at her, the sister who'd lived the life built on lies, and said quietly, "It's already done." The silence that followed broke like glass. Guests began whispering. The band stopped playing. Maylee's knees buckled, and she collapsed in Grant's arms as the room erupted in chaos. I stood there, the microphone still in my hand, watching the image of the perfect family crumble in front of everyone they'd fooled. The room exploded in noise the moment Maylee fell. Guests rushed toward her, voices rising in confusion, chairs scraping against the floor. The string quartet stopped mid-note, leaving only the echo of panic behind. My mother stood frozen, her face drained of color, one hand pressed against her chest. My father was the first to move. He stormed toward me, eyes wild, his voice sharp enough to cut through the chaos. "Enough of this. You've embarrassed us for the last time." He reached for my arm, fingers digging into my sleeve, but I didn't move. "This isn't about embarrassment," I said quietly. "It's about truth." He tightened his grip. "You think anyone believes this nonsense? You're a bitter child, jealous of your sister." Before I could respond, a calm voice came from behind him. "Let her go, Cal." He turned. June stood near the back, holding a folder against her chest. Her clothes were simple, her hands trembling, but her presence silenced the room. People stepped aside as she walked forward, her eyes fixed on my father. "I have proof," she said, her tone steady. "Hospital records, legal letters, photographs. You can shout all you want, but it won't change what you did." Someone gasped as she opened the folder and laid the documents on the table near the stage. My mother stumbled forward, her eyes darting between the papers. "Those mean nothing," she said, voice cracking. "You're just trying to ruin us." June met her gaze. "You ruined yourself when you stole a child that wasn't yours." The silence that followed was heavier than the noise before. My father's grip loosened. He looked around, realizing every guest in that hall was watching. Whispered conversations filled the space, words like kidnapping, fraud, arrest. Then from outside came the sound of sirens. Blue lights flickered through the windows. My father's expression twisted. "Who called them?" No one answered, but I saw Grant near the doorway, his phone in his hand, his face pale. He didn't look at Maylee, he couldn't. Two officers entered, calm but firm, asking for Cal and Dara Calden. My mother's knees gave out, and she sank to the floor, clutching at the hem of her dress. "Please," she whispered, "don't take us away in front of everyone." The lead officer spoke softly. "Ma'am, you need to come with us." My father tried to protest, but his voice broke halfway through. "It's not what it looks like." June stepped aside as they led them out. I stood still, the crescent necklace warm against my palm. Around me, guests avoided eye contact, their perfect smiles gone. The air felt heavier, filled with shame that wasn't mine anymore. Dara turned once at the doorway, eyes glassy, lips trembling. "We did it for you," she whispered. I didn't answer. The truth was finally louder than their lies, and nothing they said could drown it out anymore. The seasons changed before I saw the lake again. The water was still, the air cool and clean, carrying only the faint scent of pine. The chaos, the shouting, the flashing lights. It all felt distant now, like a storm that had passed. The house stood at the edge of the water, calm and silent, its reflection steady against the glassy surface. It was finally mine, legally and completely, every forged signature undone by the truth. I walked up the porch steps slowly, running my hand along the railing. The paint had been redone, the windows repaired, but it still carried the same familiar creak beneath my feet. Inside, the furniture was gone. The empty rooms echoed, the walls bare and waiting. It didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt honest. The investigation had stripped everything bare. What they found went deeper than I imagined. Bank accounts under fake names, stolen funds, property transferred through shell company. The lake house had been their center, their secret vault, the place where every lie began. Now it was free from that stain. So was I. Maylee hadn't spoken to me since that day. Last I heard, she'd left town quietly, moving somewhere no one knew her name. Part of me wanted to be angry, but mostly, I just felt tired. She had been raised in their world of control and deception. Maybe like me, she needed distance to figure out who she really was. June lived a few miles away now, in a small cottage near the highway. I visited her often. Sometimes we didn't talk at all. We just sat on the porch and watched the sun fade over the trees. She was patient, gentle, never pushing me to say more than I could. There were still gaps between us, years that couldn't be recovered, but every conversation filled a little of the empty space they'd created. That afternoon, I brought a small wooden box to the porch of the lake house. Inside were the broken pieces of porcelain I had kept, the fragments from the vase that had once shattered against my face. I'd found them packed away in one of my old boxes, sharp edges dulled by time. I knelt down, dug a small hole beneath the porch, and buried them. It wasn't anger that guided me, it was closure. Those shards had once been a symbol of everything cruel and false. Now they were buried where they could no longer hurt anyone. I sat on the steps for a while, looking out at the still water. The wind moved softly through the reeds, carrying the faint sound of a loon somewhere across the lake. The air felt lighter. I touched the silver crescent necklace that hung around my neck, the one June had given back to me. My reflection in the window was no longer a stranger. They tried to bury me with lies, I whispered into the quiet, but I was never theirs to break. The words drifted out across the water, carried away by the wind, leaving behind nothing but calm. Do you think I did the right thing by walking away from, or should I have tried to forgive? I'd really love to know what you think. And if you enjoy stories like mine, don't forget to subscribe.